to give the floor to Achille Hannoset from DG ENER, who will talk about supporting energy communities in rural areas in EU policy. So you have the floor, so you can, I don't know where you want to talk, or, and we can display the second, the other presentation. I'll give you the space.
Thank you. Super, I can see it here as well. Okay. I'm not, that's correct. Oops. So, I did design this PowerPoint presentation, I promise. So, thank you very much for joining us this morning on this important topic of energy communities. I'm very happy to discuss this together with you within the context of a rural area, because energy communities as a phenomenon is very much rooted in rural communities. Quite popular there because we are more naturally bound by our shared geographical environment in rural areas. So communities are more organically built as well. So I will take you through the EU policy regarding energy communities. Now I was hoping that this would work, but it doesn't. Nope. Ah, it just has a delay maybe. Okay. Yeah, okay, so we'll do it like this. So you have the models of consumer empowerment. So you have, of course, the individual household. You have the multi-apartment buildings, which is more relevant for the urban context. And then you have the communities, which you see a nice picture here of a windmill that is created by a community of people with credit to Rescoop EU, the Federation of Energy Communities, for taking this picture as well and allowing us to use it. So we have legislation at EU level to empower energy communities, which is quite special because energy communities is essentially a way of organizing yourself as farmers, small businesses, citizens, and municipalities. And you organize yourself around energy as a product to provide services around that to the community and bring benefits as well. So you see it here highlighted. It's a social concept, and it aims to bring these benefits to the communities rather than chasing profits for remote shareholders. That is not a judgment, but that's a difference. And we have two concepts, the renewable energy communities and the citizen energy communities. Now, what do they do? In practice, a whole area of things. It's really incredible how much variety there is in this ecosystem. But the basic principle is a group of members, they come together, they pool their investments, they get a larger pot of money, and then they invest it in renewable energy technology. Now, most of the time that will be wind or solar because it's more affordable to purchase or to invest in. You can also find energy communities that develop heating networks. This is relatively a big thing in Denmark, for example, where heating networks in general are actually operated on the basis of the not-for-profit principle. So it's a very good fit with communities. At the same time, you also see this in Germany, in rural areas a lot, that municipalities join forces with their citizen businesses, local farmers, and then also set up heating networks. And then, of course, you can use biomass to inject heat and supply heat to the local community. Now, once you have the technology or the infrastructure, of course, there are layers of activities that you can do. You can share that electricity, which is basically self-consumption. You can sell it on the market, so you can make a pretty price of it, especially if you sell it at strategic times when there is peak demand. And then you can generate profits. You can put those profits in your common pool, and then you can decide how to distribute those profits or what to use those profits for. Usually it's for benefiting the local community. Supply of electricity and local heat supply in a district heating network is what I talked about earlier. And supply of electricity, we see energy communities becoming licensed suppliers, but this is where they transition more to a traditional market actor. So the differences between the concepts, they are here outlined. I won't dwell too much on this. This is not as relevant to our discussion here today. You just need to know there are two types. One of them is more local. The other one allows you to really have a very big energy community that operates nationwide. So pull in investment from across the country instead of only the local area. Now, with the Fit for 55 package, of course, we are going for the greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030 of 55%, hence the name Fit for 55. And there's these legal instruments that you see in the boxes on the left, and they correspond with specific rights for energy communities. So we're continuing to enable and push these energy communities to really reach their objectives of contributing to the energy transition. Now, new Commission mandate means new policy instruments, initiatives, potentially even legislation or even the simplification of legislation. But one of them is the Citizens' Energy Package, which is the Commission's strategy to empowering citizens and communities in the energy transition, also ensuring that they have access to affordable energy. And that's also why the Citizens' Energy Package is part of the Action Plan for Affordable Energy. So here you see basically the main actions that are in this plan. And one of them is making sure that our communities can also have access to affordable energy. Now you see the Citizens' Energy Package has 3 pillars. The OPC was recently closed last week, actually, to be exact. So we are processing the results, and we are also designing the package as we speak. One pillar will be empowering citizens and communities to self-produce. So we will come with a comprehensive set of measures that the EU can take, the Commission can take to help communities, but also provide guidance and recommendations to the member states on how they can make their enabling frameworks more robust and effective to support these communities. Important elements there are, of course, access to financing, funding, capacity building support, and making sure the legal framework is right. So remove as many obstacles as you can to empower them. Voila. EU initiatives. So on the site, we are also providing support, technical assistance support at the EU level. The Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub was the first example and pilot action in this regard, and that ended in 2024. And here you can see the nice drawing that they also created as a vision for energy integration in rural areas. We successfully supported 28 rural communities, and we had to be strict in the application of our eligibility and evaluation criteria. There was a lot of appetite in general, so a lot of potential, but 28 managed to receive support, and here you see also the type of support that they received, and you see that investment and financial support is one of the key ones. Other EU assistance that is available today, so up to date, is the Energy Communities Facility and the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub, mainly that I want you to be aware of. The Energy Communities, the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub, is a continuation of the Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub that I just showed you. So we will continue to provide technical assistance to communities, so keep your eyes open for this. The technical assistance will probably launch around December this year or January next year. And we also have explicitly now farmers and local municipalities, towns, villages within the scope to make it also more accessible even to the rural areas, or relevant even. The facility, Energy Communities Facility, is an instrument to provide grant support for business plan development. This is seed funding, so up to 45K in lump sum grants that you can receive as a community. The deadline for the first call is the 3rd of September, so we still have time. But there will also be a second call for proposals next year, so no worries. if you don't manage. The Energy Poverty Advisory Hub and the Covenant of Mayors is a third initiative, or fourth even, that I wanted to highlight. This is an initiative that is mainly about pulling together citizens and cities and helping them with designing local energy and climate plans. Now you will hear more examples of that from the representatives of the Covenant of Mayors, but there's a link with energy poverty. So they have 3 pillars they work around with cities, and one of them is energy poverty, and here they collaborate with the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. And the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub provides then technical assistance to cities, towns, villages to let energy poor and vulnerable households participate in energy projects. So that's the linkage there, and with that I said all that I wanted to say. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Achille, for this overview of EU initiatives on the energy communities in rural areas, so very inspiring. I suggest that if you have questions, you keep them. So I suggest that after the 4 presentations, I give you the possibility to ask your questions to benefit to the whole group, and then you will have the possibility to discuss some issues in the different subgroups. If they are. So thank you very much, Achille. So it was very interesting as first speaker. So now I'm inviting Clara Hormigos from the Joint Research Center, who will, I would say, talk about energy poverty and potential for rural areas. And you will also, in that framework, present the data analysis coming from the Rural Observatory. So Clara, you have the floor, and I give you the micro.
Hi, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. And so today I want to talk a bit about energy poverty and also about renewable potential in rural areas. And this will be a database talk, so bear with me, please. Will be based in some data and analysis we have developed in the context of the Rural Observatory with colleagues at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. And just for a bit of background, the Rural Observatory, which was already mentioned this morning, is an horizontal action of the Rural Action Plan, which aims to collect data and produce analysis that can support rural development. So I want to start talking directly about energy poverty, and in particular energy poverty in the context of the EU's Energy Efficiency Directive. And the directive already provides a definition of energy poverty as this lack of access to essential energy services, and recognizes that it's a very multi-factor phenomenon that can be caused by a variety of factors that include non-affordability of these energy services, insufficient disposable income, high energy expenditure, also energy efficiency is involved, so many different aspects. And the directive also recommends the use of some indicators to try to evaluate levels of energy poverty, and these are the indicators that I'm showing you here. So these indicators are collected by degree of urbanization. So this was already mentioned this morning, this importance of having data for rural areas, for towns, and for cities to be able to compare and contrast. And they are the ones I'm showing you here. So citizens' self-reported inability to keep their home warm. The prevalence of arrears on utility bills, so people who report not being able to pay their utility bills. Dwellings which have leaks, dampness, or rot, the at-risk of poverty rate, which was precisely shown this morning. And also we added to our analysis the share of household expenditure in energy services, which covers this high energy expenditure dimension. Great. So let me show you some data. This is data from the Household Budget Survey, which tells us by member state and by degree of urbanization, the share of the expenditure that each household is dedicating to energy services. And as you can see, in most member states, the share is higher in rural areas. And also at the EU level, it is higher in rural areas, with rural households dedicating around 7% of their household expenditure to these energy services. But you can see, for instance, that in rural households of Slovakia, of Czechia, and Bulgaria, this share is much higher, above this 12%. Here I'm showing you some more data, some more indicators. So on the left, you see the share of households which report being unable to keep their home warm. And as you can see here, the situation is very diverse across member states. We don't find a very clear pattern at the EU level, but we do see some member states where rural areas are struggling more and others where they are struggling less. And on the right, you can see the prevalence of arrears in utility bills, so the share of households who report not being able to pay some of their utility bills. And here we see that the prevalence is a little bit higher in rural areas, but again, very dependent on the member state and in the context of each country. So there are a couple more indicators which I will not show you now, but I want to show you instead an indicator that we computed, that is this energy poverty index. So what we did is we combined all the data by degree of urbanization of these 5 indicators. We standardized it, we averaged it to summarize it in one single measure of energy poverty that can tell us a little bit what the status is when we combine all of this information. And these are our results, so let me walk you a bit through this plot. This is this energy poverty index, and the 0 would be the EU average. So everything that falls above 0 would have higher levels of energy poverty, and everything that falls below 0 would have lower levels of energy poverty compared to the EU average. And as you can see, for all the member states that fall to the right of this plot, so where energy poverty levels based on these indicators are higher, rural areas are always the most affected territorial typology. So it doesn't mean that rural areas are always most affected, but we have this case where energy poverty levels are higher, rural areas tend to be more affected. And this is especially true in Bulgaria, in Romania, and Greece, which are the member states who are more to the right of this plot. So we also had a look at the energy efficiency and energy need dimension of energy poverty. And here what we did is we tried to do an analysis at the very local level of how buildings are, building shapes, building volumes, and also building age, and also about the climate conditions at the very local level. And in particular, we looked at these 2 indicators, the heating and cooling degree days, which tell us something about the climate effect on energy needs. And what you can see here in the map is the main challenge for each municipality regarding energy efficiency and needs based on this data. So green areas are areas, municipalities, which have very large buildings with very large volumes per inhabitant, which makes them more difficult to heat and cool, and also less compact buildings, which tend to be more houses, detached or semi-detached houses. Whereas the yellow areas are areas where the building stock is very old, and blue areas are areas where the climate, the cold climate, is the most important challenge, and in red areas, which you can see here in the south of Spain and Greece, are areas where the warm climate is the most important challenge. And what we find, very not surprisingly, let's say, is that the common challenge for rural areas are these large buildings with large volumes per inhabitant, and also sometimes colder temperatures compared to cities and towns. So having said this, I want to spend the last couple of minutes talking a little bit about renewable energy and how it can connect to energy needs and energy, to meeting these energy needs in rural areas. In this case, what we did is perform a high-resolution assessment of how much renewable energy is currently being produced in the EU at the municipality level, and what is the potential to produce more of this renewable energy. And we looked at these 3 sources, so solar photovoltaics, onshore wind, and hydropower, which are 3 of the main sources. And I want to stress here that in order to evaluate this, 1 minute? No? That's okay, I'm finishing anyway. So what we did to evaluate this potential is we did a land suitability analysis, which was very conservative. So we really excluded all agricultural areas and natural areas that can be important resources for rural areas as potential new sites for installations. And even with these conservative conditions, what we find is that rural areas actually hold 80% of the EU's renewable potential. So that really the key here is in rural areas. And already today, rural areas are producing more than 70% of the EU's renewable energy. So as this session says, key players in the energy transition, that's actually very, very true. And just a couple final words on the specific potential on rooftop photovoltaics as it connects to this energy needs in homes dimension. And I want to stress here that rural areas have actually, from a technical point of view, a very high potential per inhabitant to produce electricity with rooftop photovoltaics. So we tend to think that areas where there is a lot of build-up have more potential, and from an absolute perspective that might be true. Here in the map you can see where the build-up is concentrated, right, which tends to be more in cities. But when we look at the potential per inhabitant, it's higher in rural areas because we have more suitable buildings, which have more suitable roofs and larger roofs per inhabitant. So actually in many member states, rural areas have the potential to cover all their electricity needs with rooftop PV. And perhaps this installation can also be facilitated by a higher share of ownership in rural areas where almost 80% of citizens actually own the dwelling they live in. And this is all I wanted to say. I leave here a bit of a summary, and I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Clara. Thank you very much for all these figures based on the work of the observatory, among other sources. So very, very interesting, inspiring also to discuss later. So as I proposed for Achille, keep your questions, your concerns, issues that you would like to share with the whole group afterwards and in subgroups, as I mentioned before. So now we are going to listen to Alison from the Covenant of Mayors, who will talk about, it has already been mentioned before, the sustainable energy and climate action plans in rural areas. So Alison, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Rural Pact, thank you to the Director General of Agri for inviting the Covenant of Mayors to be here today. So let me just very quickly explain what the Covenant of Mayors is and then obviously why it's relevant to the discussions of the Rural Pact. So we are a 15-year-old initiative. We're managed by DG Energy and also DG Climate Action. And we are here to support local authorities across Europe in achieving their vision of decarbonised and resilient cities with access to affordable, secure and sustainable energy for all. So that's the mission. We have 11,000 local authorities across all 27 member states that have signed up. They've made a political commitment to achieving climate and energy action. They develop action plans that they then implement and they then monitor over time. And we have 3 key pillars. So we have mitigation. That was where we started. Then obviously we realised not only do we need to mitigate, we also need to adapt. So we've got this adaptation pillar. And then the latest pillar that came on a few years ago was energy poverty. And again, thanks, we've heard about the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. And Kristina, who's talking on a different project today, she's also a member of that consortium, should you want to ask more questions. So what I wanted to do today was just share a couple of inspiring examples of what some of our rural signatories, our local authorities in rural areas of Europe, are doing to really move this energy transition forward. There are many examples, so these are just a couple, and then I want to just share how local authorities in rural parts of Europe that are not yet part of this movement can join the covenant or just in general move on climate action. So this example is from Italy, Campi Salentina, and I know for some rural areas 10,000 inhabitants is already quite large, but this is in Apulia in the south, in the heel of Italy, and it is an economy that's very reliant on agricultural production, so olives, grapes, sunflower, and tobacco. I didn't mention tobacco here. So they have a project which is called the GROWS project, which is currently being implemented. And what this project was really about was increasing energy savings and energy production from renewable energy sources, particularly in public buildings, noting that often local authorities aren't always in control of what's happening in the private space, so they often start with the public. They wanted very much to ensure that availability and optimization of renewable energy sources across the entire territory as well. They wanted to increase energy efficiency of lighting. That's a major source of energy use in cities. Obviously, the CO2 emissions reduction, looking towards 2050 and decarbonised cities is important. This project, and you'll see, was really, though, about also exploring how to do better public-private partnerships, not just for this project, but in general. And they wanted to look at this area of energy performance contracts and how to learn from improving those. So the reason why I think this is an interesting example is, first of all, for a small municipality, it was quite novel to receive a large European Investment Bank grant to actually undertake this. So it's 1.5 million euros, which was then leveraged. But a really important part was it was about intermunicipal cooperation. So they didn't just go it alone. They engaged with 23 municipalities around them to actually move forward on this, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment. So a range of achievements over time. 40 buildings have gotten to sort of what's called nearly zero energy buildings. Obviously, sometimes old building stock, and particularly in areas where buildings have some cultural heritage aspects, it's difficult to get complete net zero. They replaced bulbs in 22,000 streetlights. They introduced these energy performance contracts with the municipalities around them, and they leveraged through this initial 1.5 million investment over 60 million in additional funding to make their buildings net zero. And obviously here below I've got a couple of additional numbers, which numbers don't always mean anything if you're in context, but they've got quite optimistic ideas of where this can go. The energy poverty aspect was important, and sometimes that can be forgotten, but there are opportunities within these, I guess, improving energy performance of buildings to really tackle energy poverty, also thinking about vulnerable consumers, thinking about children, given schools were a major focus. So really ensuring that energy poverty is not an afterthought, but is an explicit objective was critical. And they did things like these GROWS energy info points. So they kind of were available in the communities to really then talk with businesses and citizens about how to move on energy efficiency. They also had a technical office established within the municipality that could then help small and medium businesses and other municipalities also move forward on energy efficiency. So it was really, again, trying to not just use this opportunity to improve their buildings, but to sort of grow the movement. And they're very much part of this Puljen renewable energy and energy efficiency productive district. So again, broader sort of objectives through this project. I'm just going to mention one other project here. I've got a couple of more slides on other projects because I'm assuming maybe these PowerPoint presentations will be shared so that you can sort of look a little bit more. But I now move to Chalki in Greece. I don't know if we've got any Greek people here, but this is an island municipality, also rural, but obviously with quite different challenges. And so this was a really nice example of a citizen-led, again, thinking the Rural Pact obviously is very much citizen-driven, renewable energy community. So they used solar PV, and it was one of the first green islands in Greece. So the benefits from this generation of energy was then shared with those community members that are at risk of energy poverty. So again, we're constantly seeing this link between the possibilities to do energy projects and how we can address the needs of more vulnerable consumers. So again, they used National Green Island Scheme funding and the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility funding, so leveraged those different projects. The target was the entire island. Again, I guess in smaller places you can target an entire population, but again, energy poverty is an explicit objective. And again, here you can see that one of the major highlights was a 55% reduction in electricity bills for the 250 residents, which is not insignificant because energy is a major cost for island communities. And you saw in the earlier presentation that Greece also share of energy as a part of people's bills was considered, I think, the third highest in Europe. So again, we've just got here a few more statistics. So again, skipping these, not because they're not important, but it's just later if you want to look at another couple of examples. I realised just now they all seem to be Italy and Greece. There are many examples in other parts of Europe, so excuse me for sort of focusing in on those ones. What I just want to finish with is talking a little bit about the CCAPs. So the CCAPs, which was mentioned earlier by Pascal, they stand for Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plans. And really, as I said, once a local authority, a mayor, makes a political commitment with his council or her council to actually move on this. They develop a sustainable energy climate action plan, which has an inventory on things like emissions. It has a risk and vulnerability assessment, so we understand the baseline where we're at. And then it has a range of actions that the municipality commits to achieving over the foreseeable future, often with the big objectives of maybe carbon neutrality by 2050. The new 2040 targets will come out soon. So again, there's different targets you can look at. And then they need to monitor those every 2 years. And so the Covenant of Mayors provides this framework to support them in doing this. So for rural municipalities, which often, but not always, but often are smaller, we also encourage what's called a joint CCAP. So a bit like the example from Campi Salentina, it's not that you have to go it alone. You can actually work with other municipalities around you to develop a joint commitment for climate action, thinking also that the resources to achieve this are sometimes well spent when municipalities work together and sharing technical capacity, sharing equipment, sharing a range of different things. So I just wanted to mention that we, as the Covenant of Mayors, have established this as a possibility for local authorities, and either each municipality can set their own targets, so greenhouse reduction targets, but also resilience and energy poverty, but then share the same joint measures, so different targets, but we're all going to do these actions to move towards that, or the whole group can commit to the same targets and the same actions. So just here, just wanted to mention that we have over 267 groupings of municipalities representing over 1,000 local authorities that have actually taken up this approach of joint sustainable energy climate action plans. And a lot were in Italy. We have a lot of small municipalities in Italy that are part of the Covenant. So just to sort of say, there are opportunities for local authorities in smaller places that think that this might be beyond their capacity. We're trying to enable you to join this movement, and with all the support that the Covenant of Mayors and its partners can provide in terms of linkages to the regional authorities that actually then support the local authorities on discrete actions, funding, technical capacity, and the like. So just to say, on our website, we have some materials, we have some webinars on the topic, quick reference guide. Again, I hope the presentations will be shared so that you're able to sort of click on the links here, but very much open and available for anyone that would like to talk about this as we move on. And I think I will stop there. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alison. It was quite inspiring to see how the local authorities can be involved in energy transition, energy poverty management, and also you mentioned the CCAPs, the joint CCAPs, which is a very interesting also example how you can put your resources together at the level of the local authorities. So again, we will. You are free to raise some questions and issues afterwards. Now we are going to our last speakers, and it's two speakers, to talk about, you mentioned it, I think, quickly, about the Renoverty initiative, which is about the development of rural energy efficiency roadmap. So I will invite, perhaps, I don't know how you share your time, so Valerija, Vrček, Habazin, from the Northwest Croatia Regional Energy and Climate Agency, and Kristina Eisfeld from the Climate Alliance, Germany. So I don't know how, I think that Kristina is starting firstly? Okay, so you have not a double time, huh?
Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you for the Rural Pact as well for inviting us. Alison mentioned, by the way, the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub there. I'm working as well, but today I'm on another mission.
Feel free to.
Exactly. So let's start with Renoverty. Valerija and I, we are working on the Renoverty project. It's a live project, also funded by the European Commission, by DG ENER from SENEA as well. And we are focusing on the rural areas in Europe, on 7 regions specifically that I'm going to show to you. And today we're going to talk about the so-called rural energy efficiency roadmaps that we have been designing over the last 2.5 years roundabout. So that's why I'm here as well today, to promote renovation as well in rural areas. As we know, there are several barriers connected to that. And we have been focusing on 7 regions, and especially and very new and innovative as well was that we were cooperating with the LAGs that are here as well, I think, today. And we had on board 12 local action groups all around. And we have been co-designing these rural energy efficiency roadmaps that I will call from now on only REERs, because it's faster. And of course, we have done that also with other stakeholders involved, with the municipalities and also craftsmen, but also NGOs at the local level. And the aim is, of course, to deliver the scalable operating model for Europe. So in combination with the building renovation passport in the end of the day. But we focused specifically on the rural areas. Here you can see the map of countries that we have been involved in, also the local action groups. So it's Sveta Nedelja and Zumberg in Croatia, Tartu in Estonia, Bukmak and Solo Marclemente, and then from the leader as well, and it's in Hungary. Then Sazavia in Slovenia, Parma in Italy, and Coimbra in Portugal, and Osona in Spain. And just quickly also to wake you up, we heard it, but maybe some from the audience, some characteristics of rural areas, what you think is connected to energy poverty. You can just shout it out. What do you think? I mean, Clara just presented it. You should be all awake. Old buildings, exactly. What else?
Buildings in really bad shape.
Exactly, thank you.
Poorly insulated.
What?
Poorly insulated buildings.
Okay, let's move away from the buildings now. What else? Yes, what? Exactly. Let's look at the socioeconomic aspect maybe a little bit. Pardon me? Yes. But what else? Yes. Yeah, we didn't have that, the solidary housing, but yeah, okay. What did you say?
Generally more poor in the rural areas.
Exactly, exactly. And maybe to education, you have maybe a clue about the educational level?
Lower.
Okay, so I think, yeah, Anna?
High home ownership.
Exactly. You also wanted to? Yes, we had that as well. So we did an expert survey, not as big as GRC, and also it's apart from the household budget survey, but also a huge literature review. So you can read it all up in the full report. It's, I think, almost 150 pages. But we found the socio-demographic structure, which is different from the cities. We have more elderly people, but young people aged 10 to 19 and fewer people in working age. So we found that the educational capabilities is different, so limited access to education. I think we heard it as well yesterday during the keynotes and the panel, and specifically the tertiary education. Lower labor capabilities, so fewer jobs, and also the prospects, narrower variety of activities and higher unemployment rates. And the lack of infrastructure and services, what you just said actually and mentioned, and yeah, lower access to grids and resources. Okay, that we all know. We have it also here in the bubble, word cloud. But I want to focus maybe on some barriers and gaps a little bit more in depth. So we have 4 different barriers. So the first one is the financial barriers. The lack of upfront capital, which is very, very important for energy poor households, as well in the city, but especially in the rural areas. Then the higher energy burdens that you already mentioned, and the lower income, but especially also the accessibility of loans. So we have a lower credit worthiness. So it's really hard for people in rural areas to access the loans. But as well, from the interviews that we did, we found that there's a higher debt aversion. So people don't want to take some loans. Then the geographical barrier that we all know, and the physical isolation, but also the lower access to skilled labor who would perform the renovation activities. So it's hard to go to the rural areas. Some craftsmen work have to stay there, you know, like it's all connected to that. But as well, the awareness and access barriers. So there is a lot of skepticism going on. So some quotes maybe you have also heard is a PV panel radiates. Yeah, stuff like that. Or it was always good to have a little bit of humidity in the cellar. But as well, the lack of technical information that we also have. And the digital divide is also there. So having the knowledge about subsidy schemes is more problematic because of the digital divide, but also the pure access of physical offices, talking, for instance, about one-stop shops, yeah, that are not there in the rural areas. And yeah, this is also connected to the marketing channels and some regulatory barriers, so the unsupportive and fragmented policy frameworks that do not reflect the current rural needs. And of course, the weak regional involvement in national energy planning. But we did also, I just wanted to show you one graphic from the survey that we had. So we were asking, do barriers to energy efficiency improvements exist in rural areas? And 60%, it's a clear yes, and the yes refers to the financial barriers. Okay, and so we see that literature really has the evidence of increased exposure to energy poverty, just to sum it up. What we did is we designed these rural renovation roadmaps that have both the technical aspect and the non-technical aspect. But first of all, what is a roadmap? So it's a tailor-made for each specific building, data-driven guide for households. It's really specifically for one building, but we focus here on the rural areas. It is combining the technical order data with some social factors, with the help for how families can really access, for instance, subsidy schemes and so on. And also we have some guidance also for the local authorities to plan and finance energy savings home upgrades. And you can see here like a small points that we enclosed also in the roadmaps from the first contact, understanding really the needs of the households, and then the audit results. So that feeds into the so-called DREAM model. It's a huge statistical analysis software where we identified the best possible solutions for each household. Then we setting the renovation expectations, and then how to plan step by step the renovation, and also looking long term. And then overcoming, of course, the barriers. And also we mapped the market that is in that area where the lack and where the buildings are. Let me see if that will work. Yes, it works, the animation. So in order to achieve climate neutrality, we need all these four aspects, basically the technical solutions, the financial solutions, the community solutions, and the regulatory solutions. And we have to involve all the stakeholders, and we provided with these rural renovation roadmaps some tools for all of these four stakeholders, for the local action groups and the stakeholders, the homeowners, and the policymakers. And then that was the road to climate neutrality, basically, in the end. I'm sorry, it's a little bit destroyed the format. And with that, I'm heading over to Valerija, and I'm giving her the floor to go into one specific area that we provided also a roadmap. It's Svetlana Italianson, Barak, and Croatia.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kristina, for this amazing introduction of our project and activities. I will take you now in Croatia, where our pilot case focused on two very different areas, rural municipality of Žumberak and peri-urban city of Sveta Nedelja. Typical housing, typical family houses in these areas are mainly uninsulated brick houses where people rely heavily on gas and wood for heating. These houses were built in 1960s, and this together results in very poor thermal comfort. To better understand this situation, we conducted energy performance certificates, which really proved that we are talking about very inefficient houses, and most family houses in our pilot area are categorized within energy class F. Those EPCs, energy performance certificates, were also aligned with national standards and also with official program of Environmental Protection and Energy Efficiency Fund to ensure that homeowners will be able to apply for a national subsidy. The biggest challenge in our pilot area is actually that most family houses are built with no registration. They are literally illegally built, and therefore they are not eligible for national subsidies. But still, there is a really high potential for deep energy renovation, and local community has shown really strong interest in change. I will not focus here on barriers because Kristina already mentioned them, but for example, in our rural pilot area, Žumberak, the situation is even more complex because they are dealing both with this geographic isolation, but also with severe legal and administrative barriers. Within the Renovarty project, we managed to develop local and national REERs, which are mainly based on the results of the groundwork, and also we developed them through 3 co-creation workshops where we gathered more than 70 participants from all 3 levels, from local, regional, and national level. We were also supported by our 2 pilot LAGs, LAG Sava and LAG Valis Kalapis, in this process of developing our roadmaps. Roadmaps demonstrated that co-financing could drastically improve economic viability of renovations, but they also highlight this need for tailored support, but also for tailored subsidy schemes for rural areas. When it comes to the implementations of our actions, measures were categorized, grouped into 4 categories. We have technical measures that are mostly connected to the promotion and installation of PV system, then legal measures that are mainly related to the integration of REERs measures into relevant national strategies and plans, like a social climate plan, then financial measures where we so that energy communities could be a great model for energy renovation too, and community measures where we are providing support, both technical and administrative, to householders to actually carry out renovations. We already have a good practice in Croatia. This is Local Action Group Sava, which only a month ago managed to establish the first renewable energy community in Croatia, and they are planning to include also citizens that are experiencing energy poverty within their community, and to share benefits of energy community with them. This approach already inspired replication, because 2 other LAG from Croatia joined our mentorship program, which was established through the Renovarty project. And this all is actually showing how this model that is developed for a small rural or peri-urban area can grow and can spread to other communities as well. Thank you very much. Here are both my and Chris's contacts. If you will have any questions, feel free to contact us.
Thank you to both of you to give this very broad overview of this Renoverty initiative focused on one key example, successful example. So many thanks for that.